Hey, this is Jen, and you really do love science. You just don't know it yet. How are you doing on your metric prefixes? I know you know these from middle school, but how are you really doing, and are you really comfortable with your metric prefixes? Let's review a couple of them, okay? We're talking about prefixes like kilo and centi and milli, and these are the three main ones that most teachers want you to have memorized. How are you doing on, for example, the kilogram or the kilometer? A kilogram is 2.2 pounds. And so if you can picture something that weighs about 2 pounds, that's a kilogram. And I want you to be able to picture these things in your mind, like how heavy a kilogram is, and not just memorize what it means on paper. And then what about a kilometer or a kilometer? How comfortable are you with a kilometer? Well, a kilometer is about a half mile. It's like 0.6 miles, if I remember correctly. And so if you run a 26K marathon, like a 26-kilometer marathon, that's a lot shorter than running 26 miles. What about a centimeter? You're supposed to be really comfortable with a centimeter. A centimeter is about as wide as, you know, wide ruled paper, that notebook paper you had or you still use? Well, the wide ruled paper, the thickness of those lines is about a centimeter. So it's kind of about as wide as this, depending on your screen, on your computer screen. So a centimeter, if you picture also most people's pinky, like the fingernail on your pinky, is about a centimeter wide. And so I want you to be comfortable with the centimeter and the kilometer and the kilogram. By the way, in physics, whenever you talk about mass, you will always be using kilograms in physics instead of using grams. For some reason in chemistry, they tend to use grams, and in physics, they use kilograms, which is the standard unit. The international system of units decided on the kilogram as the standard unit for mass. And then what about a millimeter? A millimeter is really, really tiny. It's sort of like a dot on the paper, like the thickness of a period at the end of a sentence. So a millimeter is really, really tiny. And now that you can picture them, see, first I want you to be able to picture how big they are, because then when you memorize how many go into it, like how many millimeters go into a meter, you won't get it backwards. If you know a millimeter's tiny, then you'll know that 1,000 millimeters fit into 1 meter stick. And I hope you know a meter stick. You've seen them before. They're very much like a yardstick, just a little bit longer than a yardstick, but approximately a yardstick. Now notice that the millimeter is the small unit out of the millimeter and the meter. This is the smaller unit because the millimeter is tiny, and compared to the meter is the bigger unit. And notice that the bigger unit out of these two numbers, the bigger unit gets the smaller number, and the smaller unit gets the big number. That's always the way it works. I'll show you another example. Let's switch colors, shall we? Okay, a centimeter is about this long. It's about as wide as the pinky on your hand. Okay, so if a centimeter is about that wide, would it be 100 meters that fit in a centimeter, or 100 centimeters that fit in a meter? Well, you got it right. It's 100 of these short guys that fit into 1 meter. So notice that this is the shorter or the smaller unit, and notice that it got the bigger number. Whenever you have an equality and you're trying to figure out, oh, how many centimeters fit in a meter, and you're trying to decide, you're like, oh, centimeter, I know the number's 100, but I can't figure out if it's 100 centimeters in 1 meter or 100 meters in a centimeter. Just remember that the smaller unit gets the bigger number, and the bigger unit gets the smaller number. Also with centimeter, I want you to remember, the easy way to remember this is 100 cents fit into $1, right? And so therefore, if you just remember 100 cents fit into $1, it's going to be 100, like let's do centigrams equals 1 gram. 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. 100 centiliters equals 1 liter. See how easy it is? And so the prefix cent, or centi, means 1 over 100th, just like a cent is 1/100th of a dollar. So let's turn this around just a second. I want you to be able to write it both ways. Isn't it true that 1 cent is $0.01? And so just like that, 1 centimeter is 0.01 meters. You see how both of these expressions are exactly the same thing? But I want you to be comfortable with both expressions. So let's practice a little bit more. Kilo means 1,000. So it's a big unit. It's bigger than the gram. Therefore, it gets the small number. And we're going to have the base unit, which in this case is the smaller unit. Not always, but in this case it's the smaller unit. So it's going to get the bigger number. So a kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. How could we reverse that? What if I asked you 1 gram and I want to know how many kilograms fit into 1 gram? The answer would be 1/1000th, or 0.001 kilograms is equal to 1 gram. Notice that both of these expressions are the same. Milli means 1 over 1,000, or 0.001. Milli is a very small unit. Remember, a millimeter is tiny, tiny like that. It's basically very small. 1,000 millimeters fit into 1 meter stick. But let's see if we can reverse it. If I asked you 1 millimeter, well, how many meters fit into 1 millimeter? That's a weird way of saying it because not even 1 meter fits into a millimeter. So it's a fraction. So you could say 0.001 meters is equal to 1 millimeter. Just like 100 cents equals $1, or 1 cent equals $0.01. You see how they really, really mean the same thing. So let's try to think of some familiar objects to help us get even more comfortable with these units. A kilogram is sort of like the mass of, a really large, heavy potato. It's 2.2 pounds. So just picture a pretty large, heavy potato. I'm trying to think of something else that is about as heavy as 2.2 pounds, but I think you can picture 2.2 pounds like it's that lightest weight. When you're at the gym, the tiniest little weight that actually I do use a 2-pound weight when I'm doing little arm exercises. And so that's a kilogram, 2.2 pounds. I want you to be comfortable with that, just so that you recognize it. A milligram is really tiny, and it's the mass of, I don't know, let's think of something really small like a sesame seed. So a milligram could be the mass of a sesame seed. Very small mass. It's 1,000th of a gram. What about a gram? A gram is sort of like the mass of a paperclip. So you can sort of get a feeling for how heavy a gram would be. And then we have a lot of other prefixes. We've got prefixes like mega, like megabytes on your computer. And mega means a million. And you can remember that because of Mega Millions jackpot, which is the same as saying 10 to the 6th. And so a megaliter, for example, is 10 to the 6th liters, or a million liters. And you could also say that 1 liter is equal to 10 to the minus 6th megaliters. The abbreviation for mega is capital M. Or you could say 1 over a million megaliters equals 1 liter. We also have this other prefix called micro. And micro has this special abbreviation. It looks like a U with a tail on the front. And I drew an extra long tail just to exaggerate it. But micro actually means 1 over a million. So it's the opposite of mega, or the inverse of mega. And so there are 1,000,000 micrograms, for example, in 1 gram. The microgram, think of a microscope. The microgram is tiny. It's so tiny that you'd probably need a microscope to see something that weighed a microgram. And so, because it's tiny, notice that it gets the big number with the small unit, and relatively speaking, the small number goes with the big unit. And the abbreviation for microgram, you would use this Greek letter mu, which is the Greek M, and we're going to use that as the abbreviation in front of the abbreviation for gram. So 1 microgram, again, equals 1 over 1,000,000 grams, or 10 to the minus 6 grams. And your teacher will also want you to know these prefixes. Milli, of course, means 1 over 1,000, or 0.001. Centi means 1/100th, or 0.01. Deci means 1 over 10, or 0.1. Deca means 10. Hecto means 100. And kilo means 1,000. So let's see if we can practice a little bit. Can you fill in these blanks? And there are actually 2 ways to fill in these blanks. Pause the video for a second if you can, and see if you can fill in the blanks. Let's say 1 meter is how many hectometers? Well, hecto, we look down here and we see hecto is 100. So that's a big unit, meaning it's greater than 1. And so the big unit gets the smaller number. So we're going to say 0.01 hectometers equals 1 meter. The hecto unit was big, so it got the smaller number. You could also say 1 hectometer equals 100 meters. That would also be true. Let's try the next one, decigrams and grams. Well, we look down here and we see deci is 1 over 10. So this is a small unit. And because it's a small unit, it's going to get the bigger number. So I'm going to say 10 decigrams is equal to 1 gram. Or you could say 1 decigram is equal to 0.01 grams. Let's do milliliters and liters. Well, I look down here, I say, well, milli is 1 over 1,000, so that is a small unit. And I remember that a millimeter is tiny and a milligram is tiny, like a sesame seed. And so if it's a small unit, it's going to get the bigger number. So the 1,000 goes on this side, and the 1 goes on that side. Or if you want to say 1 milliliter, you could say 0.001 liters. Notice that the small unit still gets the bigger number because 0.001 is a smaller number and the liter is a bigger unit. Okay, and now comes the embarrassing part. I have 3 songs to sing for you, and yes, I wrote these lyrics just to help you remember your metric prefixes. So here is a song for you. Are you ready? Milli, 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 so silly, silly, silly in the morning. A millimeter's tiny, fit 1,000 on your hiney in the morning. 1,000 millimeters in a meter stick. A liter's got 1,000 mils, so don't you get tricked. Milli, 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 oh so silly, silly, silly in the morning. Very silly, isn't it? That's just the first of 3 songs, so it gets even sillier. Okay, so now let's go for song number 2. We're going to practice the concept of kilo, like kilogram. You ready? This is a song to the tune of Gilligan's Island. I'm not sure if you've ever watched Gilligan's Island, but when I was a kid, we watched it a lot. So, if you want to buy a kilogram of silver or of drugs, you're getting away with 1,000 grams. Look out, you might get mugged. Look out, you might get mugged. A kilometer's really long, the end is out of sight. 1,000 meters is 1 km, and now you'll get it right. And now you'll get it right. All right, now we're on our third and final song, and this song is about centi. This one is super, super corny, so you're going to have to forgive me, but this is sort of, kind of, to the tune of Old Lang Syne, even though I'm saying that wrong. Old Lang Syne, however you say it. Okay, you ready? It's very hard to sing. Oh, centigram, 0.01 of a gram. A centimeter is as wide as the pinky on your hand. 100 centimeters all lined up in a row fit nicely on a meter stick, and now you'll always know. Yay! Those are my 3 silly, silly, silly songs. And if you memorize the lyrics, maybe it will help you with your test when you have to memorize your metric prefixes.